So hi, I'm Jeremy Manners. I'm the Chief Editor for RIAMS for RHE Global, and I'm here today with Jim Nixon, who's our Community Safety Director. Hi Jim, how's it going?
Brilliant. Thanks for having me on, Jeremy. I really appreciate you asking. It's going to be a good chat, I think. So yeah, brilliant to be here.
Yeah, really good to see you.
Thank
So we're going to talk about the crime and policing bill that's currently making its way through the parliamentary process. It was introduced by the government in February this year, and it's replacing what was previously a Conservative policy, which was a criminal justice bill, but that fell at the dissolution of Parliament before the general election last year. So the crime and policing bill looks to introduce a wide breadth of measures to tackle knife crime, violence against women and girls, antisocial behaviour, which is what we'll be talking about today, as well as also retail crime, serious and organised crime, fraud, theft, public order, terrorism, sexual offending. The list goes on. It's a really big bill.
Yeah, it's huge.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. There was also a really highly sort of political and publicised amendment that was recently made, and it was a Labour MP amendment to remove the threat of criminal prosecution for women who self-manage abortions. Yeah, that was a really interesting one, wasn't it? And it's really positive to see.
Yeah, really positive. Really good to see something like that being put through. So if that's been put in as an amendment, yeah, I mean, I've not looked at it in any great detail, but I had a quick look at it yesterday, and I think that's a great move. So yeah, really positive.
Yeah, absolutely. But today we're going to focus on antisocial behaviour, and we've seen that the government is really committed now to tackle antisocial behaviour, so they say, and that's what part of this bill is about, and it's supporting their Safer Street mission, which aims to reduce serious harm and increase public confidence in policing and the criminal justice system in general.
Sure.
So before I ask you a few questions, Jim, I'll just mention a few of the key areas that are coming through in the bill. So we've got new respect orders, which will allow local authorities and the police to impose restrictions on adults who commit persistent and harmful antisocial behaviour. We've also got the ASB case reviews, and I know I'm going to ask you about that a little bit later as well. And looking to introduce an independent chair into the system. And there's also some information in there on cuckooing, which is all about controlling another person's home for criminal purposes.
Sure.
That's another area that's really important that we tackle.
Yeah.
So Jim, right, I'll ask you a few questions.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So focusing on antisocial behaviour and local authority enforcement, can you give us a quick overview of what the bill is about and how you think it will affect practitioners?
Yeah, I think when we were talking sort of before we started today's recording, I think ASB is so important, and I hate the term low level, which it's been described as in the past. It's low level. ASB affects so many people across the UK and across the world, really. But when we're just concentrating on England and Wales, it's such a big issue, a growing issue, and goes well underreported, I have to say. And I think it just fell off the political agenda for a while, and it's great to see this. I think anything new that can be introduced, and I think we're still cautious around it, but I think it's been introduced really to look at a stronger, more coordinated approach to tackling antisocial behaviour across England and Wales. We have to remember that this legislation doesn't cover Scotland. For any Scottish listeners, I know, having worked with some of our Scottish antisocial behaviour professionals, they are currently looking at some recommendations that they've given to the Scottish Government that they are currently reviewing. So we're only really looking at this bill for England and Wales. But I think it builds on the government-wide plan to make communities safer by increasing accountability. The big one for me, supporting victims and giving local police and local authorities new powers to intervene early and more effectively. So I think that's really, and I think the core around it is tougher on persistent ASB. That persistent drip, drip, drip kind of effect that it has on people that pushes some people to the edge. So I think we're going to be seeing this bill responding to the growing public concerns that ASB is often underpoliced and underpunished, ensure that repeat and high impact ASB is tackled quickly, especially when it affects victim safety and quality of life, as I've just mentioned, and then just strengthen community confidence. That low level crime, and again, it's mentioned there, I've just read off low level. I hate that term.
Yeah.
For me, any crime is a crime. Any ASB is ASB, and it's got to be taken very, very seriously. ASB can grow very, very quickly from something very, very sort of early doors neighbour dispute to something really serious very quickly. And I think we've got to be tuned into that. So I think that's really how I see the bill and what it can hopefully achieve. It's early days. It's still got to be passed through the Lords and obviously, given final kind of sign off. But I think anything new has got to be a positive move in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's really important, isn't it? I mean, it's not low level. It affects so many people in so many different ways.
Yeah, I've met so many people, Jeremy, that I've dealt with cases where they are literally on the edge, or we know for a fact that, I say this all the time, if we as practitioners get ASB investigation wrong, history will tell us, you only have to look at the Pilkington case and other cases, people will die. We have to get this right. And this is why it's so important that people like me and you can highlight, on sessions like this, how important it is. Because if we don't get it right, people do perish, and we need to completely eradicate that.
Yeah, I completely agree, Jim. So I think one of the big talking points as well has been respect orders. They've received a fair bit of attention. I wonder if you can sort of tell us a bit more about what they are and how they might be used.
Yeah, I think when I've looked at the campaign, because we've already got the civil injunction. So the civil injunction was obviously brought in, well, it was already in, but it was kind of, it was changed when we looked at the ASB Crime and Policing Act, which is now, we're now into 2025. It's, 11 years old. And when that was brought in, I think it served a really good purpose. But I think the way the government are looking at these respect orders is, for one, obviously the injunction is a civil matter where the respect orders, although civil, will be a criminal offence. And I think from what I can see, it's really about looking at the perpetrator and looking at positive change, attending respect building programs, engaging in community service. Now, the one point I would make is that positive requirements have always been available on the civil injunction, but for whatever reason, it's never really been well taken up. I've used it quite extensively, but one of the barriers I found was that partners were sometimes very reluctant to say, for example, it's a positive requirement to say on an injunction to say you must attend a drug rehabilitation session once or twice a week at a particular time at a particular location. What I found was that actually sometimes we saw some real barriers with some of the partners actually engaging in that part of that particular civil injunction. So I think what the respect orders are trying to look at is that there will be a lot more emphasis on that sort of that offender and that rehabilitation. Now, I think one of the things that springs to mind is we can't make people respect. It's a difficult one. I'm not sure the choice of words of this order are what I probably would have chosen, but they're there. And if they are more focused on not just looking at prohibitions in terms of you mustn't do this, you mustn't do that, which I think is very much the mainstay of the civil injunction. If it does go away to actually looking at that longer term rehabilitation of offenders and getting to the root cause, then that's got to be a great thing. I think also with the respect orders, and I think we're still sort of in the early stages of this, but I think when you look at them, it's about trying to get them through the judicial system quicker. Now, I still, again, the jury's out for me on that one. Whether that will happen or not, time will tell. But I think it's also about looking at how we can get these orders up and running and through that system quicker. I'm hearing a lot of stories at the moment with the injunctions that there's lots of delays and it's taking a long time to get some of these injunctions through the courts. So again, that will be positive. And I think with young people as well, these orders are aimed at 12 to 17-year-olds. So they're going to be looking at, when you're looking at sort of conditions that are attached to the respect orders, looking at age-appropriate conditions, regular reviews, integration with youth services and mentoring. Again, what I would say to anyone listening to this that is involved in ASB, we do a lot of this already. We work in partnership. We look at age-appropriate conditions, even when you're looking at the civil injunction for young people, as I've taken out on many occasions. So there's a lot here that's already there. So again, I think we just need to trade very carefully. But like I said at the start of the conversation, Jeremy, anything that kind of, is new and may help, and may make victims or less victims, then it's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what your comments about the court system, I mean, that there's real need for reform there. We're seeing across all areas of environmental health that when it comes to the courts and the tribunal system, the delays are just getting, incredibly long and frustrating for everybody involved. And at the end of it, you've either got someone who's having to live in poor conditions or is suffering with ASB and they're just waiting. And it really needs to be looked at to see how that can be improved and sped up.
Yeah, what the government are saying is that when you compare the civil injunction to the respect order, when you're looking at criminal justice, they're sort of saying that there's going to be a streamlined process. That's what we expect. But again, they're going to have to get over a lot of hurdles, because the civil injunction was always intended to be a quick process, particularly if you're going without notice, ex parte as they call it, where there's a real risk and you're trying to get an order in court very quickly to protect victims. That's always been there as a quick process. And certainly when I worked in social housing, we would get injunctions. I'm going back a few years now, but we would get injunctions in court literally next day. That's not the case so much now. It depends on the court, but yeah, they're saying that the process is going to be more streamlined. I hope it is. I hope that's a good thing, because that is only going to make victims more protected and feel that they've got confidence in these new orders. So let's see. Time will tell, but let's keep our fingers crossed that they will come up with something that will help.
Yeah, for sure. Let's hope that happens. Just moving on a little bit, if we can just talk about ASB case reviews. So I know back in the day they were referred to as community triggers.
That's right.
They've been around for a long time now. I'm not sure they're fully understood or really utilised appropriately. Certainly my experience hasn't necessarily shown that. I just wondered what your take was on this. I understand there may be a requirement to have an independent chair now, and just wondered, is that actually part of the bill?
Yeah, I think there's some sort of bits that have been set out. So when the previous government brought in the ASB action plan, what they sort of said was they put greater emphasis on the police and crime commissioners at that point to say must have that statutory requirement or responsibility to promote the community trigger as it was, but then they changed it to the ASB case review. Again, I'm not sure the choice of words is brilliant for the ASB case review, because we all conduct ASB case reviews in our own day-to-day business within our own organisations. So I'm not sure. I think the community trigger it came across to me a bit harsh, as if you're pulling the trigger. And I think that kind of worried practitioners that it was being treated as like a complaints process, which it clearly isn't. So choice of terminology, probably not the best, but I think there was that greater emphasis back in 2024 for PCCs to be promoting the community trigger stroke ASB case review, because in my experience, Jeremy, it hasn't been very well publicised. And you talk to victims all the time, and I get contacted by a number of victims that, in fact, I've just been contacted by one this morning that probably the ASB case review would be relevant. They've never heard of it. And there's a big concern for me that it's not being well promoted even now. So there's still a lot of work to do. I think what the new crime and policing bill will look at is an extra tier in terms of review. So what they're going to look to introduce is like a local policing body that will allow escalation if the case review that's initially been completed and reviewed isn't to their satisfaction. Okay. So I think it's going to give, I think at the moment, what the review process says, or the appeal process says, is that if say, for example, the original case review has missed out key information stroke evidence in that review, then you have the right to appeal. And then the other criteria point is if the process hasn't been properly adhered to. But I think this new crime and policing bill will add that extra layer from a local policing body point of view and allow escalation if a case is either refused. So say, for example, they say the threshold hasn't been met at that local level, or the victim is unsatisfied with the outcomes. So I think that's going to be a bit more transparent. In terms of the independent chair, I personally think that it is the way to go with the independent chair. I think a lot of organisations now are starting to look at this, and I think it comes from, representations made by the victims or representatives of the victims to say, well, if you're reviewing my case and all the same people are involved in this particular case, am I just going to get the same outcome that I've got, from going through the officer or the officers that are dealing with my case? I've chaired a number of ASB case reviews as an independent chair, and instantly when you speak to the victims, because one of the things I always do when I'm given the huge responsibility of chairing as an independent chair, I'll always make contact with the victim or victims before the actual day to talk to them and to give them my credentials and to provide them with some reassurance, and also the guidance to say, look, don't talk about your case in detail at the start of the hearing of the case review. Concentrate on the impact. And I think straight away that gives the victims confidence that you understand ASB and you are going to help them as best as you can, albeit in an impartial way.
So connecting on with them on a human
and then
level.
What I find is when you then conduct the review, as some people that aren't familiar with the review, what a lot of organisations now will do is they will allow the victims to come in and probably have 15, 20 minutes at the start of the review meeting, whether that be in person or online, and then they will be asked to leave the review meeting. And then the practitioners and the independent chair and the panel will then listen to all the evidence and then make some key recommendations, if there are any recommendations to be made. And then that will be fed back to the victim or victims. Again, one of the things that I really, really think is important is I will always feed back to the victim or victims after the review meeting in person. I will call them or I'll do a Teams call with them, and I will run through the recommendations with them before they get that formal letter. And again, I feel that's really, really important that they understand, and you can give your rationale as an independent chair why you've made those I
suppose that's all about keeping the person, the victim, at the centre of the whole case, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Making sure that they know they're important.
The worrying thing, Jeremy, is there are still some case reviews that are going on out there in England and Wales where the victim is not even involved in the process. So they're not even invited, or even a representative invited to that particular review. And I think what I've seen across the country, having chaired a number now, is there's such a wide variance in the ways that the reviews are conducted.
Yeah.
Some are quite formal and some are very, very informal. And I think actually one of the things that ASB Help are working towards, they do something called the ASB Case Review Pledge. So ASB Help are like a national charity that are looking at best practice to help ASB victims and ASB practitioners. And what they will do is they will work with the organisations through a series of kind of benchmarks, and they will help that organisation to get the best possible quality ASB case review to deliver then on behalf of victims. And that for me has got to be a great thing. So again, anybody listening, have a look at the ASB website, www.asbhelp.co.uk, and there's some great information on there around how they can apply for the ASB pledge, ASB case review pledge. It's so important.
Yeah, no, it's really fascinating. I think how it works and how it can be so different in different parts of the country.
I think the one thing I'll get across on this interview today is, if you're a practitioner listening to this, it's not a complaints process. It's a great opportunity for you to learn. I am a practitioner in ASB with 30 years service this year. I am no expert. I learn all the time. I'm picking up things from practitioners, from members of the public, victims all the time. You've got to constantly grow in this industry. You don't know everything. And I think the key to get across is use it as a great process to learn and to grow from how you've conducted that investigation. It may be that there are things that you've missed. Not a problem. That's what the case review is there for. It's about all the practitioners with the independent chair and the independent panel to make some key recommendations and then take that forward. And you as a practitioner will learn so much from that process. So please, please, please do not treat it as a complaints process. And that's a really important thing to remember. And I think that's why it's being avoided, Jeremy, and people do not promote it because they're worried that it will be scrutiny on them.
Yeah, everybody does get a bit worried about criticism, don't they? And I think that's the thing. You've got to move on from that and see it as a learning experience.
But I think this is what comes back to the point I raised earlier, that if we get it wrong, it can go so badly wrong.
Yeah.
So this is like it's a fail safe. It's a way of like bringing people in like me that can just kind of be on your side and help you and kind of get that case back on track and prevent people from perishing because we've got it wrong and we've let our egos get in the way.
Yeah. And is that something you can help with, Jim, through your role
yeah,
with
definitely.
RHE Global?
100%, yeah. If you contact us at RHE Global, I can provide, the independent chair service. Obviously, there will be a cost. It's not huge. We try and keep it to, a kind of a decent level in terms of the cost. So it's not a great amount, but it means that you will have that independent chair that understands ASB, understands the ASB case review, and I'd like to think we'll give a really, really good service to the victims when you are dealing with them, and also the practitioners. I get a lot of practitioners that will still come to me now, many, many months or years after I've conducted ASB case reviews for them, and just ask me around, what about this, what about that? And that is a completely free of charge service that we give. I just do that because I'm passionate about ASB. The company are really happy with me doing that, and it just really helps, again, get people working together and moving towards best practice as much as we can.
So practitioners can use you a little bit as a sounding board.
100%. I'm constantly putting out posts on LinkedIn to say, look, I'm running from some free sessions for the next week or so. If you've got a problematic case, you're not sure what to do with it, or you just need some general advice, give me a shout. I'm happy to jump on a half-hour Teams call with you. I did a couple the other week, two really problematic cases, talked you through with the practitioners. They'd already got a key idea of what they wanted to do, but they just wanted that little bit of reassurance from somebody like me that was completely independent, and then they can move forward. And I feel really good about doing that, because it just means I can still play my part and help people. As I say, I'm not an expert. I never will be, but I have got a fair bit of knowledge after 30 years, so I'm really, really happy to help where I can.
That sounds absolutely brilliant. If we could we'll just move on. We've said already there's so much in this bill, but if we could just talk about cuckooing as the final thing. I know cuckooing is something that I've come across myself in my local authority work. It can be a really big problem for housing teams as well as community safety teams and housing associations, and difficult, I think, for the police to be able to identify and actually tackle it. The bill introduces some specific cuckooing offences where criminals, and often criminal gangs, take over another person's home. And they're usually the most vulnerable people, aren't they, who are exploited this way. And do you see this as a positive development?
Yeah, I think it is, because I think up to now, what the police, in particular, because I think you have to understand that the police are really the key partner when you're talking about cuckooing. Yes, the housing providers are so crucial, and their tenants are so crucial in identifying that there's something not quite right. You're absolutely right, Jeremy. The more vulnerable members of society get preyed on by gangs, and what we need to understand is there's lots of different types of cuckooing. Sometimes it might be another vulnerable individual that is probably not as vulnerable as the tenant that they're targeting, and they will engage with them, and the vulnerable tenant will think that they're in a relationship with them, and actually what they're doing is over time exploiting them for maybe money and obviously use of their property. And at the high end, you've got those drug gangs involved in the drug distribution within that area, and they will literally take over a property, whether that be to deal from or also to store drugs. And they literally do take over that particular property, and it's not a nice process. And I think it has presented challenges for the police in terms of sometimes it's not always easy to take action, particularly if the tenant is kind of making out everything's fine and there's no issues, they're just friends that are staying. And I think the fact that we're now going to potentially get an criminal offence that, is cuckooing, I think will really help. I think up to now, what we've used a lot is the closure order powers. Great powers. I've used them for many, many years. In fact, I dealt with a cuckooing situation even back on the old ASB legislation when they were the old style closure orders, where it was more specifically aimed at drug dealing and usage. It's been going on for years, and I think it's become more and more highlighted. And I think any step in the right direction around cuckooing is a really positive step in the right direction. I think the other positive that comes out of the Criminal Justice Bill 2025 is also that housing providers now, like social landlords, will be able to initiate the closure powers as well. So I think that's a really positive. Still, there'll be a heavy reliance on the police to police that. You know, I think we have to be mindful of that. But yeah, it's a really in-depth subject. And I think it has presented with the current legislation. I think it has presented the police with some real barriers. So I think making a specific cuckooing criminal offence can only be a step in the right direction for me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think from what we've seen, I think there's so much in the bill, as I've mentioned a couple of times, but there's a lot of positives in there, and it remains to be seen how they're actually going to work. But it sounds like from what you're saying is it's all positive.
Yeah, I think we've got to be positive. I think it's so easy to knock it. And I think I do have concerns around, whether or not we're going to be able to get these respect orders through really quickly. And also the fact that there's clear evidence that positive requirements that are there on the civil injunction have not really been taken up. So I'd like to think that the respect order and all the work that's being done by, say, the government organisations like ASB Help and Resolve, ASB UK, that obviously have a real input in some of this work, and it's so crucial that they do, and other key ASB practitioners that kind of advise government. I'm hoping that these respect orders, along with some of the other recommendations and new legislation, is a step in the right direction. But let's see. You talk to a lot of practitioners out there and everybody's still a bit cautious. And I think that everyone's right to be cautious because, there's always kind of teething, problems with any of this new legislation. But I think it's down to us as practitioners to make it work. And if it isn't working, then to go back to government fairly quickly and advise them in terms of how we can tweak things and how we can make things better. So let's keep our fingers crossed and let's be really positive about this. My view is if we can help victims and prevent people from being impacted by ASB and overall saving lives, got to be a good thing, hasn't it, Jeremy?
Absolutely. No, thank you, Jim. Thanks for your time. It's been a really sort of fascinating insight into sort of your experience of dealing with antisocial behaviour and what's coming in the bill. Just before you go, I will just mention we've got some training sessions coming up.
Yeah.
So there's a practical use of community protection notices, which is the 16th of September, and that's in partnership with Resolve, as you just mentioned.
Yes.
We've also got ASB Enforcement and Mental Health, which is on the 15th of October with the brilliant Anna Smith, who I think you know well.
I do. Anna's great.
And we've also got coming up on the 11th and the 12th of November with yourself, Understanding and Enforcing Public Space Protection Orders.
Yeah, public space protection orders is I think there's three very key courses there. The community protection notice, again, something I don't think has always been very well understood. I think there's areas in the England and Wales where it's been used really, really well, like Liz Smith, who conducts our training for us. Liz is a director at Resolve and actually runs an ASB service for Stockport Homes. Really has used the CPN to really, really good effect. And I think if you're a practitioner out there that is looking to use the CPN, or probably you're not using it as effectively as you would like, then get on that course. Liz is absolutely brilliant. What she doesn't know about CPNs isn't worth knowing. She is brilliant. And the way she delivers it and explains it to practitioners is just, I've learned so much. I watched the recording of her training the other week and I've learned loads myself, and I train a lot of people. So I think that course is brilliant.
I went on that course myself, actually, a few years back, and it was absolutely brilliant.
It's brilliant. She's so good at the way she presents it. And then the mental health training, again, one of the big barriers when you're tackling ASB is when you come across perpetrators with mental health, you come across victims with mental health. We're not expecting ASB practitioners to be experts, but a good understanding, and not having those. And by having an understanding, knowing that when you do want to take enforcement and you do believe that there is capacity with that particular alleged perpetrator, then there is light at the end of the tunnel and you can take enforcement action, which I think a lot of practitioners shy away when mental health is mentioned. They probably don't take the action that is appropriate. So I think getting a good level of understanding from a mental health point of view and how you piece that together within the ASB investigative world is great. And then finally, the PSPO's Public Spaces Protection Orders, something I've been extensively involved in when I was a local authority ASB lead. Again, something that I think some organisations, local authorities have jumped into and probably regretted it. So what I will do on that course is I will be really honest with people and say, this is the legislation. This is how you can implement them. These are the kind of scenarios that we can think about when we're implementing them, but also think about whether there are other options, other tools in the box that you can use before you commit to the PSPO. So I think, again, that's a great course that we run over a couple of days. We do kind of 2.5 hours, times two, over 2 days. And the feedback we've been getting is brilliant. And again, what I love about those courses is you get people from all over England and Wales that are all working together and all got a common purpose. And when they go into their breakout rooms, they're all learning off each other. And what I say is, we're facilitating a great conversation and a great learning process. 3 great courses, Jeremy, and hopefully we're going to grow our ASB offering in the next sort of few months as well. So look out for a few other courses that are coming down the line soon as well.
Those courses sound absolutely great. And I'll just get my own plug in as well. So RIAMS Communities, we've got a group dedicated to community safety in ASB. If you want to talk with practitioners and network with practitioners doing a similar job to you and perhaps share some awkward cases or discuss issues that you're dealing with, then you can do that online on RIAMS Communities. And all those courses that we just mentioned, they're all available on rheglobal.com. So if you have a look on there, you'll see all our training courses.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, all that's left is thanks so much, Jim, for your time. That's been really helpful.
You are more than welcome, Jeremy. It's been great to chat to you. I know we catch up quite often, but yeah, it's been great to have this kind of chat. And let's end it on saying let's be positive about this and see if we can get some really good outcomes and again help as many victims as we can. So thanks for the chat. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks everyone.